I'm Vanessa Johnston. I am an end-of-life doula and the vice president and co-founder of the Colorado End-of-Life Collaborative. We also have Cindy Kaufman on the call. She's the president of the Colorado End-of-Life Collaborative. And we are so honored to be presenting this event on the Day of the Dead. Happy Dia de los Muertos to everyone. We're so honored to have Rabbi Baruch and Ariella Haleve. They, and sorry if I don't get the pronunciation, they are the owners of Soul Centered here in Denver. And Rabbi B is going to be our guide for today, and Ariella is a healer. They have a wonderful center for meaning, spirituality, and healing in Soul Centered, and they have lots of programs that you can check out on their website, which is mysoulcentered.org. They have Carry the Fire, a program focused on dealing with grief. They have Your Sacred Body, dealing with healing. And so all kinds of things to help you deal with what they call the T's in life, the transitions, tests, trials, traumas, and tragedies, particularly for those in the afternoon of life. But I have a feeling that they could guide and help heal anybody who came to them, at least help them get in touch with those tools within themselves to do that. So today we're going to be talking, or they're going to be talking about a topic that is just fascinating to me, especially on today of all days. So it is Healing the Dead, a spiritual two-way street. So we're going to let them kind of take over and explain what they mean by this and how we might go about it. And we're going to plan to wrap up at 2, but if there are questions and you want to stick around, they have graciously agreed to do that. If you want to put things in the chat, Cindy, are you going to kind of keep an eye on that? And if people have questions, we can address those. But otherwise, I will turn it over to Rabbi B and Ariella. Thank you so much for doing this for us today. And we are recording it, so we'll have the recording later for everybody.
Thank you so much. I'm going to let Ariella start, but I just want to check logistics and everything. Is the sound okay? Sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Yep. And it's a small enough group that you know, if you want to jump in, you can jump in, but you can also type. I got the chat open, so we'll respond right away. Want to start?
And I think we know almost everyone here, so that's like a little gift in itself.
Oh, great.
Yes. So thank you so much. We are so honored to be here. Cindy and Vanessa, thank you so much for having us. And you know, even though we are talking about healing the dead, this is for me, it's just such an interesting and in a way uplifting topic. So we are excited to dive in. Maybe first we'll just kind of tell you a little bit more about who we are and what we do, and then we'll move forward. And again, like Baruch said, like B said, just jump in. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll feel free to make this a discussion as well. So I am a master healer, and I help people really find the roots of their wounds and their traumas and why they can't heal on so many different levels. And I do that through mediumship, through intuitive guidance, ancestral healing. I also teach Kabbalah, and through energy medicine healing. And my passion is to help, mostly women, is to help women really move from a place of grief, loss, trauma, wounds to a place of inspiration and transformation and excitement about their lives. And ultimately why we are so passionate about doing this is because so many of our clients have lost people. And from that loss is the potential for a great, beautiful life, even through that loss. I also hold a monthly healing circle, which actually starts tonight. So I'm going to put in the chat. We put in the chat. I'm going to put in the chat. You're all invited. It's a complimentary healing circle. And this is for all people that just are feeling overwhelmed by life because of the energy that is moving way too fast for all of us. And perhaps you have had a loss. Perhaps you're going through transition. And this is going to be intuitive guidance and meditation, some energy work, and just some whatever kind of spirit leads us to. So that's kind of a continuation of our discussion today. So now I'll let you take over.
So I think I do know most everybody, but not everybody. So I'll share a little bit about my journey and why and what we're presenting today. So Baruch Halevi, you're welcome to say Baruch, but most Americans opt out of the ch sound, so just B. I've gone by Rabbi B for 20 years, so whatever you'd like to address me as is fine. I am a rabbi. I've been a rabbi for, again, about 20 years. And during that time, I've had the honor and privilege of being with people at the most vulnerable, shattering, and important times of their lives, and in particular around dying and death and grief. I wrote a book on it. I went back to school and got a doctoral degree in counseling. And I wrote a book called Spark Seekers, Mourning with Meaning, Living with Light. And for me, it's professional. It's also personal. My father completed suicide 15 years ago. My grandmother completed suicide when I was 15. Myself and my sister, she became a psychic medium. Her name's Rebecca Rosen, you might know her. And myself became very passionate about guiding people, I think in response to watching my dad descend into darkness and not having a articulated belief system, knowing where to go or what to do or how to connect, believing that his mother was dead, not understanding that he now had an opportunity to help her heal on the other side. And so I've spent my adult life, my professional life, helping people understand essentially that it is a two-way street, that they speak to us, we speak to them, they can help heal us, and we can help heal them. And that's going to be the nature of our talk. And I'll just lastly say I'm a logotherapist, meaning-centered psychotherapist. And it's the work of Dr. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, Holocaust survivor. And really this dovetails into his work because out of the Holocaust, right, he ultimately said, it is our obligation to discover meaning, possibility, purpose, and transform darkness into light. And that's what I have seen people do in the face of death, in the aftermath, is to proactively, consciously face it, to go into it, and to discover the sparks, which is, I think, what we're going to do right now.
Yeah.
Good.
So let's dive in. Somebody asked, what time will this Zoom meeting be? I'm assuming tonight. It will be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Sorry about that. So yeah, let's have a conversation. And that's what we like to do together is we have a lot of conversations. We started that 23 years ago and it continues today. So in terms of these conversations, we chose the Day of the Dead to do this talk. Number one, because, and I'll get into a little bit of the reasoning why and this time of year and why it's so important. But most of all, like B said, there's this idea that, you know, you go to a psychic and you receive messages, or you go and you ask for your loved one's guidance. And so this time of the year is to uncover the awareness that it's a two-way street, that we affect the dead as much as they affect us. And during the year, I always think of summertime because summertime is the hardest time for me to connect. It's like this outward kind of masculine energy where it's hot, you want to be outside. The veil is not as thin as when it gets darker, right? When we go through the autumn, the equinox, this idea of energetically connecting as it gets cooler. So as we head towards Halloween, we think of Halloween as this day of like excitement and candy and fun and costumes, which it is. We just went last night with our 10-year-old. But really what it is this collective energy towards the spirits. We are taking this, oh, it's so much fun. And we think we see ghosts and we see like our crazy stuff outside in our front yard. And it's not just like we have fun stuff outside in our yard. If you think about collective holidays, they have an energy to them. And so the fall is this collective idea of kind of moving in. The days are growing shorter and we're getting more quiet. We're going more inside. That's a feminine energy. And so the veil becomes very thin between us and our loved ones that have passed on.
I want to jump in. Thanks for having me. By the way, when growing up, I was always the Jew in Nebraska. You can imagine I was the token Jew, and now I'm always the token male on these calls. So thank you for having my people. I'm happy to represent. I really thought about this when you were talking, that it is, because if you look at other holy days, like the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur is the Day of the Dead in Judaism, and it's the shift into autumn. It has to be. And really just listening to what you're saying is so true. It's a collective energy that we intuit, that we We are going inwards in this shift, which is why in the spring, the Day of the Dead wouldn't work in the spring. Easter, Passover, these are rebirth holy days on the spring side. So really just listening to the energy as we go into it makes sense.
Right. So All Souls Day, I think there's All Saints Day, Day of the Dead. These are all days where we remember. And again, as you said, every religion has its day. But there's also this idea of like a Day of the Dead kind of energy, which is a collective energy towards the psychic, right? Towards the idea that there's not one special person that is quote unquote psychic, that we are all psychic, we are all intuitive. And this is the energy of, especially now in the world that we are living in, if you are in tune with anything that's going on in our world, you know that the energy of the world is moving really fast right now. A lot of what I do is kind of sit in meditation and feel the energy. And everyone can do that. You just have to get quiet enough to do that. So by feeling in with the energy of what we're going through and what we're moving through in our world, we are able to discover that that veil is very thin. And our job now, because it's getting colder, it's getting quieter, our job is to, instead of running out there, right? That's a summer thing. We want to go run and do. But fall and / sort of winter is that turnaround where we become more feminine and we become more introverted, not introverted, introspective. And so if you have this desire, because you can feel the winter coming and that stuff coming up, it's an invitation to really go down deeper inside and tap into your intuition.
So the Day of the Dead, just like Halloween, just like Yom Kippur, just like is an intention. Right. And I think what we're saying is setting an intention for this season. We just wrote a blog on Thanksgiving and it's going out this week. Why this week? Because Thanksgiving isn't what happens on the turkey day. Thanksgiving is a process of opening to gratitude. And if it's just reserved for that day, how many blessings and possibilities are missed along the way? So really starting to open as we enter into the dark season. And to be vulnerable, because really that's, when all of us here, when we've lost loved ones, I know many of you are death doulas, you escort loved ones into the next world. It's the ultimate of vulnerability to hold that space, to remain open to them and to feel that pain. Ariel always talks about, you got to feel it to heal it, to feel your feelings. And so really setting an intention over the next few months.
So let's go in a little step deeper, right? So we have this idea of the veil is thin, we're setting the stage. And now let's go a little bit deeper as how and what are the principles of connecting and why? And so kind of what we said is the idea of connecting is we've always seen it as a one-way communication. Oh my God, I just received a message from my grandfather. I mean, last week I was at the chiropractor's office when I wasn't supposed to be there, and I had changed the time, and I was sitting against the wall and listening to my chiropractor have a patient. He had a patient in his room, and it was an older woman. She was probably in her 80s, 85, 90. And she was talking very loud about this condominium that she can't remember the name of. And wasn't it beautiful? And she described it all. And she was describing the condo that my grandparents had bought and lived in Santa Barbara when I was growing up. And she walked out and she's like, I can't remember that name. And I was like, I know that name. It's Bonnie Mead. And it was just like, she was talking about my grandparents and where I spent my childhood. And I'm sitting here in Denver at the chiropractor's office. You can't make that stuff up. So the beautiful thing is, yes, I received a beautiful message from my grandparents. I just felt all that love. And now what is our responsibility to give back in that way? It's not just, it is thank you, because I loved it. But how do we then turn this on its head and give back to them? How do we do that?
And here's the answer. Aren't you glad you tuned in? So I'm going to just go back in time a little bit to the Torah, to the Bible. I'm a Kabbalist, mystical Judaism. I'm not that interested in all of the dogma and the rules and the details. And I'm interested in all isms, and especially where they all kind of cross over. And this will ring true wherever you come from. You know what the number one commandment in the Bible is? You probably would guess it's something to do with the dietary laws or the worship or whatever. It's actually remember. 169 times, remember, 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 over and over and over. Why remember? You only command what needs to be commanded. You don't command your kids to eat more candy on Halloween, right? It's unnecessary. They will do it on their own. So why command us to remember? Because we will forget. Remembering is an active process. We think of it as a passive process. Oh, I had a memory. But from a Kabbalistic perspective, the word is zachor, for any of you who know a little Hebrew. Zachor means remember, but it's also the word for masculine, like Ariel is talking about. It's an outward energy. It's a doing energy. It is not a passive energy. How does that change our relationship with the dead? When we start to see it as an active process, that I am a participant in creating, in manifesting, in perpetuating this life. And so I come to a teaching that I share. I've done 500 funerals. I've shared it at 500 funerals. I'm sharing it again. It's the most important teaching I've ever been given on remembering. And it's this: a person dies two deaths, once when their body dies and once when their story dies. And there's nothing you can do about your loved one's physical death. Their body has died, but you are a guardian of their story. You are a guardian of their memory, of their name, of their essence, of all that they represent. That puts us into the driver's seat. That makes us powerful, right? And so we become creators in this process of remembering. And that's the foundational idea, I think, to start with, of what we owe the dead. First and foremost is to actively participate in the creation of memory.
And so part of remembering is also a two-way street. It's remembering them, right? And so let's just take that. It's remembering them. We were walking last night, we were trick-or-treating with a new family that we've met through our son's school, and they're from Mexico City. They moved here 3 years ago. And he said, part of the way we celebrate is we make an altar. And every year we make an altar and we put up our grandparents and our relatives, and we put candy around it, and we have like a celebration. I think that's sometimes in our Western culture, we forget like to really honor the dead. So many of us we've been through the therapeutic system, and it's about, disengaging from our parents and having boundaries from our parents. And I think for me, reclaiming my mother's death, who she died 3 years ago, I spent a lot of time putting up those boundaries and those walls and healing from my childhood and all of that. And what I came to, and what this dad helped me remember, is that there's a lot of good that comes from the memory of our loved ones. Yes, they are flawed because we are flawed. We are human, and they were human too. So they have hurts and wounds and traumas just like us. And if we spend so much time pushing them away, then sometimes we forget the memory, those really positive memories. And so he reminded me that, like, every time he puts up an altar, and you can create this at home, it doesn't have to be an altar. It can be like I have a space where I work, and it's a table, and there's my mom when she was a little girl, because she looks so beautiful. And there's my mom and myself, and there's my grandfather and my grandmother. And it's like a whole little remembering, right? So part of it is remembering who they were, those resources and the ruptures. And then the second half of this is remembering who we are. See how that relationship is like fluid, it's together. It's not just their memory, it's our memory. And we're going to go deeper into this, but it's a remembering of who and where we came from. It's a remembering of the fact that, there's a lot of fear, and we all have a lot of fear, but fear and love it's like oil and water. So it's remembering that you are ultimately love. It's getting to that place where you know who you are. And the more you uncover that, it's like an unpeeling of an onion. The more you keep uncovering layers, because that's why we're here on this earth, to uncover those layers, the more you heal your loved one on the other side. It's like you're still together, right? You're not, I know the physical body is gone, and believe me, we've been through hell. We know. But we also know from just communication that the more we uncover those layers of who we are, the more we help our loved ones ascend. They are still working with us, and the veil is very thin.
So continuing on this idea of memory, of remembering as an active process, again, I think that for me is the starting point when I counsel people who are going through grief, because we just chalk it up to, it's not nothing, but it's not something. But from a mystical perspective, it is a something. Right now you can hear me. How can you hear me? If we had some physicists on the call, maybe we do, you'll correct me and you'll tell me that there's energy, right? There's waves coming through and it impacts your eardrums. And my energy is literally entering inside your head right now, for better or worse. I'm sorry. But that's real. Like, there's a real transaction that just occurred. Otherwise, you couldn't hear me. There would be no connection. Thoughts are things, right? They're not everything, but they're not nothing. We know this because right now, if I think hard enough, long enough, I can stress myself out. I often do, right? I lay in bed awake at night. Why? Because I'm creating energy and I've got to slow my energy down and harness my energy. When you're feeling pain, suffering, that is energy. That's intense energy. People will say to me, they don't want to feel this way anymore. You know what's worse than feeling bad? Feeling nothing. Feeling nothing, apathy. It was Elie Wiesel who said the opposite of hate is indifference. The opposite of love is indifference, right? Love and hate are on the same spectrum. They're interconnected. They're energetic. And so when you're feeling that pain, when you're feeling that grief, when you're feeling anything, that's energy. So as we're thinking, we start directing our energy towards our loved one. Like Ariella was saying, remembering all of them. I know a couple people have lost loved ones to suicide on this call. And, one of the most tragic things about a suicide is that the person is oftentimes, for the rest of our lives, held to their worst moments, their worst 5 seconds. Most suicides take place within 5 seconds of a tragic decision. But that invalidates the entirety of my father's 69 plus years. It doesn't, but it could, because for a while it did, because I was thinking over and over about that became his story. And I was carrying that story, that piece of who he was. And over the years, what I had to do was let go of that story, right? Let that go to the earth, bury that, and carry something else, something more, a higher vibration, a higher energy, that love. And what happened was I transformed my anger, right, into love, because they're right next door to each other. Much harder to go from apathy to love than anger to love. And so as we're doing this in Kabbalah, this is called tikkun. Tikkun means repair. We're actually repairing them, healing, we might say in English. We're healing them. How? Because my dad, your loved one, a person, a spirit is stuck in this world. And we'll talk more about it. I'll let Ariella jump in. But they get stuck, they get bound up, they get trapped here in fear and negative emotion and anger and all that stuff. When we start releasing it, we start releasing them.
So let's talk about that. How do they get quote unquote stuck? And I hate when people say that because
put it on the list. I have a running list. It's like so long, I can't even bring it in here.
Sorry. I don't like it because sorry. Because I have this like, it's scary to think of somebody stuck, right? So I actually don't like thinking that, because they're not quote unquote stuck the way we think they're stuck, right? That's an earthly term. They don't get stuck like we're feeling so stuck, we're so depressed or we can't move forward. They can feel us. And that's, I think, what you mean is like,
no, I mean stuck.
Okay, well, we have to.
Do you have any marital and family therapists on the call? This could be like a free hour. Yes. So we'll take it offline.
Okay. They don't get stuck. Okay. So the point is that he always messes me up, and then I laugh and then I get off my game here. the point is this, is that they are still in relationship with us, right? So tikkun, the word tikkun means to heal. And so when a person first passes on, you have obvious permission to do whatever you need to do to get through the day, right? And as life continues, our obligation in a way is, or I like the word responsibility, is to start healing, is to start building ourselves back or in a different way through grief. And so part of that healing, which we call tikkun, part of that healing is to understand what the relationship holds, right? Because the relationship doesn't die. The relationship continues on. And so if we are, quote, if we are stuck, then they feel that stuckness. So many people that we have counseled and guided have had years and years of feeling like they're not living after someone passes on. And that is the last thing that they want from us. Whenever ever.
Hello. Hello. Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hi. Whenever I am in a healing with somebody, I think we need to.
Governor Polis orders 1 month pause because of COVID strain on hospital. Oh, I mean, good. I guess so. It's like not.
Amy, can we ask you to mute yourself, please?
I can't do it.
Yeah. Okay, so when we are in, when I'm in doing a healing with somebody, or I'm in a guidance session, the first thing that always comes up when we are working with somebody who's passed on, is that the person doesn't want you to stop living, right? The person who you have lost wants you, needs you. So that's the difference. Of course, they want you to move forward. It's okay, Jamie. But they need you to move forward. It's still a two-way street. You're still in a relationship with them. Just because you don't see them physically, which hurts, right? It hurts. My mom died 3 years ago. I ache for my mother. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could have her here physically. But I also know, because I have sat and listened to what she wants for my life. And I know that she wants me to surpass her. She wants me to heal so greatly that she heals too. And that's our job, because once they enter more of the next world, they do their own healing. But we here on earth, we have a greater capacity for healing because we chose this. We chose to be human beings on earth. That choice gives us the freedom to heal great wounds. We all come in with a set of soul agreements that we came to learn in this lifetime. We can change that. It changes periodically. As you heal, you move forward and you heal more and you open to yourself greater. But we came here to learn those lessons, and our loved ones are here kind of living through us. So if you or you know somebody who is, and it depends on what stage of grief you're in, of course, but if you feel stuck in grief, remember that it is still tikkun is a relationship. So what do you need to do? And we're going to talk a lot about tools. What do you need to do to heal your body, your mind, your spirit, your soul? How can you move forward so that your loved one can move forward?
I'm stuck on stuck. I just want to come back here. And you've said it a couple times, so I think we're in agreement. I know we're in agreement. And it is that nothing in this universe stays static. Nothing. Everything is either living or dying, right? You're growing or you're contracting. Those are the only two energies. From a mystical perspective, one side is God, divinity, light, right? Listen to this and tell me what you hear that's common to all of these. Buddha, Krishna, the original name for Jesus was Yeshua, Allah, Yah. I could go on and on, right? What is common to all of the deities that every religion says this is our Lord and Savior? Ah. They all have ah. Why? Because ah is an open sound. It's an open syllable. There's no closure to it. It's expansive. Divinity is expansive. It's by definition, it's living, it's loving, it's growing, it's infinite, versus the alternative, which are closed syllable sounds like shalom. That's a chant, and you bring, closed to it. And so there's just two different energies, ah and om. And ah is life and living. And when our loved ones get stuck here, their energy, for instance, like I'll just come use my father because he's my go-to. When he chose to leave this world, he got very stuck here. I could feel it. Everybody could feel it. When there's a suicide, there's a process where we got to get him unstuck, right? He's trapped here, and there's fear, there's heartache, there's pain, there's suffering. We owe it to him to work through that stuff down here. And as we're working through it, we're opening it up. We're releasing it because it does get trapped here. I think you've all had that experience where you've gone into a home that feels haunted. It feels closed. It feels like it's not living. I had this experience. I had done a funeral for somebody. I hadn't seen them in a year, so I went and checked on them. I wrote about this in Spark Seekers, and I went to their home. Their curtains were drawn. The house was like a museum. It felt like the day that his wife died, he stopped living. It was palpable. And what did we do? Literally, we opened the curtains, and that was just symbolic of all the opening that we started to do together. And you could feel as he started opening, as he started moving out into the world, moving forward in his life, the energy was unstuck. Well, Kabbalah says it's not just him that started living, but his wife, her spirit, continued the journey.
I love that. And I think that goes really nicely with this idea of how do we continue the journey? How do we continue this healing language? How do we do this? One part of that is thinking about, I'll give you an example as I explain this. So my mom passed away. We always use our parents because unfortunately we have them as examples. My mom passed away 3 years ago, and it began the healing journey for her and I. She wouldn't tell me that she was dying, even though I knew she was dying. We all knew she was dying, but she wouldn't talk about it. She refused until literally her very last breath. She refused to acknowledge that she was dying. And so my sister and I had to just kind of work around it because we wanted to honor her, knowing that she was dying. And that complete frustration, and I had a lot of feelings about that. And so when she passed on, I was able to not only do a lot of healing work just around her death. She had cancer for 6 years and refused to talk about her death. And so I lost my mom 6 years before she passed. And so that whole healing process would not start until the day she took her last breath. And it continued over the next 3 years. And what's happened as this idea of tikkun, what's happened is not only do you tap into the idea of healing this relationship between you and your loved one, but then there's these doors that open. If you're willing to sit with some of the silence and the pain and the tears and write about it and think about it and talk about it or talk to somebody about it, there's this idea of ancestral healing. In Judaism, we call it Lador Vador. And the idea of ancestral healing is healing your generations. In Judaism, we pass down the Torah from one generation to another on a bar mitzvah, on a rite of passage. But really what this is we have the opportunity when our loved ones pass, or even when not, but to think about not only your loved one who passed on, but all the roots that come before that loved one that she or he is now a part of. So in some ways, it's this beautiful awakening. I almost can see it intuitively of like this entire community that your loved one just, acquired wings to, right? So she or he is now a part of this beautiful community that goes past generations before we even know, before, we don't even know them. But what we can do is we can start intuiting from this loss, all the ruptures and the resources, right? The positives, the gifts, and also the wounds. Like we're all of those. What are those things that have been passed down through that person to you, or is a part of you that you want to move past in this lifetime? Like, just think about it. Maybe write it down for a second. If there was one thing in this lifetime that you would want to release from your generations, from like ancestors, what would you release? And just think about that. That's part of this lineage healing that comes often, I find when I work with people, it often comes because of a loss, right? And that's part of this whole beautiful healing, because then what happens, shamans believe that when you start looking at your ancestral lineage and your losses, not your losses, but the repairs, you can start healing 7 generations down your line. Whether you have children or not, whether they're on the other side or they're here or you don't even have, you can change the world by healing your past because it's connected, directly connected to your future. That's what your loved one wants from you.
So continuing on this repair and generations, I look at it as a chain, and a link gets broken, right? And lots of different ways. I mean, suicide is an extreme, but there's so many different ways. There's all kinds of neglect. There's family traumas and dramas, and you know what they are. I was studying the Torah with my 10-year-old son, and we were looking at the book of Genesis and Abraham and Sarah and Hagar, it's Abraham's second wife on the side. And my son's like, there's a lot of drama in this. I'm like, there's always been, there will always be. You know why there's no such thing as a dysfunctional family? Because there's no such thing as a functional family. It's like an oxymoron. There's no such thing. And so our work, our tikkun, our soul contract is our particular stuff. You think, we call it in Yiddish, mishigas, like your craziness is unique to you, but it's yours. You've inherited it for generation upon generation upon generation, and then comes to you, and you're called to the plate. You're at bat. This is your turn. It's your time. And you have the opportunity, like you're talking about, to mend the chain. And when you mend that chain, right, generation upon generation upon generation, reap the benefits of that. And your loved one on high, who's responsible for breaking the chain, reaps the benefits of that. And I use that word very consciously. When people die, we like to turn them into saints or Satan. Usually it's one or the other, right? We just remember, like, I can't tell you how many people were mediocre, average people. And then you listen to the eulogies and you would have thought, like, I just buried Mother Teresa and I thought she had died years ago, like over and over and over again. And sometimes I'll be counseling somebody in grief and they won't want to touch the dark stuff of grandma, right? Nope, that's off limits because she was a saint, right? She was so pure. She had an immaculate conception, like her and Mary, like that was it. Like she never even had sex. That's how I got here. So there's this purity that happens, and we owe it to grandma to de-sanctify her, to bring her down, because she can't heal if we don't face it and feel it and address it and repair it. So my grandma is a saint.
She is.
Except she's not, because she was so busy, Grandma Flo, she was so busy doing saintly stuff, right? We call it in Kabbalah, tikkun olam. She's repairing the world. And lots of Jewish people know this idea, fix the world, fix the world, fix the world. Your house is on fire. Like your marriage is falling apart. We got a lot of dysfunction here. It's not just the Bible. So maybe we should fix ourselves and our family, and then, concentric circles out to the world. And so I've had to do a lot of work around. She was an amazing woman. She gave us so many blessings. And one of the curses, one of the shadows, was that there was no sense of self. That was selfish, right? Being self. That's why we call it soul-centered. It's not selfish to get soul-centered, to put yourself at the center. And so one example is we're repairing her energy, her life, completing it. In many ways, it's a completion, because now we put ourselves at the center before we go helping others, and we're doing really well in our marriage. I think in no small measure because of this intention, and that you're willing to tell me when I'm stuck.
Oh, yes. And his grandmother was a saint, but you could see, I have this vision of her. We would go over there, we would go visit in Nebraska, and she would get up before everybody else after dinner and do the dishes. She would put on her yellow gloves and she wouldn't let anybody else do the dishes. And, you know, she was 90, I think, and she was still doing dishes. But part of that was adorable and cute. And the other part was that she never rested. She never was able to receive. She gave and gave and gave, which was amazing, but she didn't have that receive button. So, you know, we learn from them. And then what happens is that we return. We return. When we learn from our loved ones, we return to spirit, to God, to source, whatever you call that great feeling of consciousness when you are one. If you have ever felt that, and if you haven't, then there's the work, right? That's okay. It doesn't come all day long every day. When you feel it, you know you're in it. And it's like, oh, I just did some healing, and I'm opening my eyes to what needs to be repaired, to what is beautiful, what is ruptured. And now I can return. And returning is twofold. You return to yourself, your soul, to spirit, to source. You return them. I had another client that said, like, oh, I don't want to do this because I don't want my loved one to go farther away from me. I'm afraid that I won't be able to contact them if they're higher. And that's like the opposite is true.
That's fear.
Right. It is. The opposite of love is fear, right? So the more you love, and we're going to get into this right now, the more you love, the more you return to that love, if you want to call it love, the more you return them to that love. And then, like, my grandfather is my angel. He's my guide. He's been gone for 31 years. He has done the work. You can feel it. It's palpable. He is higher up, and his messages to me are always, you're doing the work, you're helping your mother do the work, and you're helping me do the work. You are the one that's helping. I am also the black sheep of the family, right? I'm the black sheep. I'm the one that was kind of like not liked for a really long time, still not so liked. But I'm here to do the work, right? And that's uncomfortable sometimes for people. But that's the return. We get to return.
So I think, and we're going to end with some tools, practical ways to really embody this, because it's just so important not to leave it up there in the ethos, bring it down into your life. But before we do, one of the things I see counseling people through grief is what you just said, which is there's a fear. And I just did a video on this morning because so many people say to me the same thing. I'm afraid to move on, right? Because they don't want to abandon their loved one. They don't want to betray their loved one, feel like they're moving on. When I say to people, it's true. Don't worry, you'll never move on. If moving on means leaving them behind, you can move forward, you can carry them onwards, but this is not about moving on as an abandonment. It's about carrying on and living, because as you do, they live. And as you ascend, they ascend. So your client who said, I'm afraid that they're going to ascend beyond me, but you're going to ascend. That's the symbiotic relationship. My relationship with my best friend, Mark, it hasn't stopped. I've ascended over the past couple of years since he's died, and I can feel he's ascended. And we're both going higher because of it. And there will come a point when I cross over. God willing, it'll be a few years from now, but there will come a point when I cross over and that energy has been set in motion, right? A basic law of physics, an object that's been set in motion stays in motion. And so you start now, and you start early, and you start proactively, and you create this momentum of love. And there's only two competing energies, as we talked about before: divine, light, love, open, expansive, or closed, fear, right? Fear in Kabbalah is called constriction, right? Because you can feel it. When you're in fear, everything gets smaller and you constrict. And so our work is to open up during this time of vulnerability and stay open and have faith and move forward and ascend. And that's really the healing theory framework.
Right. So let's go into some tools. Like, how do we actually do this? How do we help ourselves ascend, them ascend? How do we do this? I like to call it practical magic, because this is the Day of the Dead, right? So let's create some magic And we're all magical. We're all magical. We all can open to our own unique magic. It just sometimes takes a little bit of searching. It's like taking a flashlight and searching in the dark, of figuring out like, well, what works for me to create magic? What works for me may not work for you. So we're going to go over some basic things that can get you to start thinking about, how do I bring these things into my life? So we're going to start with the word practical magic, right? Abracadabra. I'm going to let you explain that one because that's Kabbalistic and I don't remember why we say abracadabra.
Because it's magic. Everybody knows that. So abracadabra, what everybody doesn't know is it's actually Aramaic for Christians on the call. It's the language of Jesus, spoken outside the land of Israel 2,000 years ago. And a lot of Kabbalistic texts are written in Aramaic, but it's Avra, means I will create, kadabra, as I speak. Speech is creative. If you look at the original Kabbalistic text, the Bible, how is creation made manifest? How does the divine enter this world? Through communication, not speech, through communication, because sometimes communication is nonverbal, right? Thoughts are communication, and body language is communication, energy is communication, speech is certainly communication. But as we communicate, we create. It is the greatest capacity we have as human beings to become divine-like, according to Kabbalah. And you know this because words can also destroy. How many people on the call remember 50 years ago being called that nasty name on the playground, right? Sticks and stones can break my bones is like the stupidest saying ever. Words can never hurt me. Words can destroy, but words can also repair. And that's really where we get to with abracadabra.
So going along these lines, so it's communication. The number one way, or one of the ways to create practical magic, to build those bridges between you and them, is to start using communication. Communication comes in all forms. So here's an example. Communication comes in terms of your own body, right? How do you communicate with your own body? Does your sorry, is your body giving you messages that you're ignoring? That you're like, I know I need to do this, but I just can't do it. I know I need to do this, or your body's really talking to you and you just can't listen. Maybe you can't listen, but that's communication. So communication between you and your body, communication between you and your soul. So every single day I sit in my chair and I communicate with my soul, meaning I speak out loud. Some of you on the call knows this, but I speak out loud to whatever is going on in life. If I am scared and I can't find my way through the darkness, then I'm going to speak and feel through it. And the idea of these words coming out of my mouth releases from my body, right? And who am I speaking to? I'm speaking to my soul. I think I'm speaking to spirit, to God, source. So that's one way of communicating, is communicating with your soul.
So just adding to that, and then you can take back over. In Kabbalah, the word for soul, neshama, is feminine. And so when I work with clients, and most of my clients are women, so it really resonates, naming her as she, capital S, or her, capital H, and starting to bring her into our language. So I have a client who I work with who just doesn't make time for herself. She's like my grandmother. And we started to put on her calendar a date with her, capital H. And now it's in her Google Calendar, a date with her. And she's forming a relationship. But the other piece of this is her, capital H, that deeper piece of you resides with your loved one. Like we get so caught up in our time and space, but that piece of me, she, right now, is intermingled with my loved ones. And so there is a connection. And when you start talking to her, relaying message through her, right? And thinking about her as a connection to your loved one, I think really changes the experience.
Right. I mean, I was going to say, like, the next part of that is speaking to your body, speaking to yourself, your soul, speaking to her, to God or source, spirit, ultimately speaking to your loved one. Right. So it's all these divine ways of communication. That's part of this healing. That's part of these practical, magical tools. Speaking out loud moves energy from your body. I'm a big energy person. I love to move energy from bodies. I know that sounds weird, but I believe that you can do things that can move your energy and make you feel better and more connected. So that is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is through healing. And so let's talk about healing is like a big word, but let's talk about just briefly what healing is. So we thought of joy. Part of healing is joy, is doing what you love. If you're not doing what you love a couple times a week at least, then think about ways that you can add more joy to your life if you are not finding it. As we acknowledge that joy in our life, we bring in source more, source energy. That brings your loved one in more. It opens your heart up. So the veil is very thin between you and your loved one. You don't need this day to connect with your loved ones. All you need to do is go outside, walk around and think, oh my God, I'm walking. Which way should I turn? The other day I asked, which way should I turn? And I turned right because I heard right. And I ended up seeing somebody I hadn't seen in like 5 months. And we connected and we talked, and I was thinking, like, that's life, like that's joy. So following those breadcrumbs, following the divine breadcrumbs to bring you more joy, asking, which way should I go? Start simple. What should I eat? What should I wear today? Where should I go today?
But I would just add to that really reframing it too, as this is not just about me, because today is about the Day of the Dead, and this is about them too. I'm hurting my loved one when I don't see joy, when I live in darkness, when I stop living. And the alternative is I help them, I release them, as we've been talking about. And joy is the highest energy level. According to Reb Nachman, who's a mystic, said it is higher than all energy levels. Joy will shatter all darkness. And so consciously entering joy for myself, because I see this with clients. Again, there's that reluctance of, I don't want to betray them. I don't want to live when they're not here. We're actually hurting them, and we serve them when we choose consciously joy. And joy is not happiness, right? Happiness is a thin version of joy. You can be heartbroken and still have joy.
Right. And so another part of that, of healing is, and actually joy, is forgiveness. A lot of us don't feel, not only have a hard time forgiving or finding compassion for the people who have passed on, but also mostly finding compassion and love for ourselves. The more we can work on why we can't forgive ourselves for certain things, if you can make space to just have that conversation, forgiveness can come years later. It can come in 5 minutes. It just depends. But if you can find that forgiveness, then you can make more room in there for joy. And that makes more room for spirit to come in, more room for your loved ones to flow through you. So it's kind of like it's like a cycle, right? So finding that forgiveness, that compassion for yourself, healing your shadows, healing what hurts you instead of pushing it under the rug. I always say a lot of us live from the neck up, and we don't really connect to the experiences of our body, because if you connect to the joy, I always find this, when you connect and really just open to the joy, part of that is also feeling the stuff that hurts. It's really hard to say, I'm just going to connect to this unbelievable joy and then say, well, I'm going to push away that stuff that hurts. That's spiritual bypassing. Eventually it's going to bite you, right? So opening to the joy, knowing that, yes, those shadows will also arise, and being open to them too allows for more healing to come in. That's practical magic. It's practical, but it creates the magic.
So I just want to take a moment. There's a quick exercise. Everybody take your finger. I think everybody has a finger here. Everybody has a finger. Now point to yourself and just hold it there. Just point to yourself. So 99.9% of the time, people point here. Every once in a while, there's a nudnik, a pain in the ass in the crowd who goes like this. Almost never. Susan, I know you. I'm just glad you used the index fingers. But why do we do that? Because we know intuitively we aren't here. Like, this is a piece of who we are. But when you, at the end of the day, I'll never forget. I counseled a neurosurgeon once, and I was pushing him on, is something of ultimate importance, ultimate reality that transcends this world? Nothing. Even your love for your kids? No. What are you feeling? Serotonin. I'm like, holy shit. Those kids are going to be in more therapy over that one statement than anything else. You feel serotonin when you look at your children? Like, you are so up here, and at the end of the day, it is down here. And this is joy. And so a lot of times what I do with clients, because this is what you're talking about, is help them get from here to here. And this is the longest journey we will ever make. And it's a necessary journey if you want to talk about moving through grief and healing your loved one, because this will trap you in circles. And you just got to listen to Ariella and really come down into this region.
Right. And so part of this is the next step in practical magic, which is prayer. Prayer, you can redefine it. It's not a religious thing at all. Prayer is just communication with the divine, with whatever it could be the trees. For many years, it was my dog, until I realized that I could switch
Her soulmate.
it. Well, I've had a couple dog soulmates you are too, until I realized
I'm stuck again. Okay.
Okay, prayer. Prayer is the act of asking and receiving, right? It's about, and you always say this, it's about filling yourself up. What is it like? Create this relationship. It really goes back to Abracadabra. It's communication. What is it that you need, want, and desire? Not on we could talk about manifesting, but I'm not talking about manifesting. I'm talking about your deepest love longings, what is in your heart. The more you open and ask the divine for those messages, that guidance, the more that you have to give. It's a two-way street. It's with your loved ones, it's with spirit. Opening up to that simplicity of pure joy is about prayer. When I go walking my dog every morning, I've always said this, when I go walking my dog every morning, it's a communication, not only with my dog, who's my soulmate, but it's with spirit, it's the source. What can I do today to see and feel and know more love and more joy? And then your job is to wait and watch and listen and feel into what source is bringing to you, because source will bring you things every day, all day long. If you listen, they may be mundane. That book, God in the Small Things. I think there's a book called that. And it's about finding the joy in, I think there's another book like Chop Wood. What's it called?
Chop wood, carry water. That's a Buddhist saying.
No, yeah, but that's not it. Like after ecstasy, do the laundry, something like that.
That's a book.
Yeah. It's okay. We need to do a meditation. So you end, and then we're going to do a meditation.
I think we've said it all. I just want to walk away from this conversation with the understanding that if we give away our power to anyone or anything, right, we have fulfilled our purpose in this lifetime. We are here to be powerful. If I had the Marianne Williamson quote, I would end with it, right? It scares us how powerful we are. We are sources of light. According to the mystics, we are the incarnation of the divine. And when our loved one dies, of course, we need to go through a process of constriction, of getting smaller, of going into the darkness. You gotta feel it to heal it. But then you have to stand up and walk around the block. So in Judaism, when a loved one dies, you sit Shiva, 7 days of intense darkness. You just go in it. But on the seventh day, you're commanded to stand up and walk around the block, even if you don't want to, because it's symbolic of saying, I will rise up out of this place. I will take back my power, and I will share my light. And so walking away from this Day of the Dead of absolutely positively, they can bring light into our lives. We need to ask for it. We need to open to it. We need to receive it. But don't forget your role. You are a creator continuously in their life. And as you shine light and live your life, they ascend.
So with that, we thought we would do a meditation, an energy activation, so that you can feel not only your loved ones, but your own light, so you can feel that joy. So we're just going to take about 10 minutes, if that's okay, and just kind of experience it. It's more of, it's sometimes it's even better than just listening. It's experiencing it. So get comfortable and feel free to close your eyes if you'd like, and just take a deep breath. And that's the first step, right? Is remember that you are breathing, you are here, putting your hand to your heart and just breathing. Take a deep breath in and a long breath out. And just feeling your beating heart and finding a sense of gratitude for the smallest things, for your heart beating, for the blood rushing through your body, for waking up to another day. Just feeling this divine sense of gratitude. And as you breathe, imagine breathing the breath of your loved ones. Imagine connecting your breath to all the generations behind you and all the generations in front of you. Imagine connecting your breath as you breathe. You are a bridge between the living and the dead. You are a bridge between yourself, your body, your spirit, and the spirit. And just feel this divine, beautiful, golden energy just running through the line of your body, right in the center. Chakras, the energy centers run there. Just imagine a beautiful, beautiful light. And as this light is running through your body, just flowing like a river, it's connecting deep into the earth, because we are still bodies, and our bodies are homes for our souls. But we need our bodies in this lifetime. And so connecting our energy down into the ground, into Mother Earth, feeling that energy go to the center of the earth, this allows us to stay here. For as we ascend, we also just hold that tension between life, death, and everything in between. And as we bring this energy up from Mother Earth, we feel the light, this golden sun upon us. And we allow this light to ascend above our heads, above our consciousness, to the Great Spirit. Whatever you call spirit. It can be the sun, the animals, the trees, the wind blowing on your face, allowing it to just engulf your body and your spirit, so that all you are is light in a body form. And as you're breathing through your body, just imagine as you breathe through your body, you're walking down a beautiful path, feeling the leaves blow in the wind. And as you're walking, you come upon a chair. And just beyond the chair, it's almost a bench. Just beyond the bench is the most magnificent waterfall you've ever seen. You actually sit on this bench for just a moment to just take in the joy of this beautiful waterfall. This is so beautiful that you feel invited to come into the water. Even if in real life you're not comfortable, just float. Float in right between the rocks and the water, so that you start to feel the space in between the water. So you can feel the rushing of the water, but you're not impacted by it. It's divine. And as you enter into this waterfall, it becomes magical. The water turns sparkly gold, and you're opening to these tunnels behind you. One tunnel leads you back on the maternal side of your family, and the other tunnel leads you back on the paternal side. Whether you were adopted or not, it doesn't matter. Just feeling where you came from, going back behind you, and tapping into those wise and loving ancestors. seeing their beautiful faces or just feeling their energy. And as you tap into them, one in particular comes to you. She or he sits down beside you in this waterfall. It can be somebody that you have recently lost, or maybe it's an ancestor from so long ago. You may not know their name. Feel the energy of that person coming through. And know that this is a wise and healed ancestor, one that could perhaps be a guide for you. And putting your palms in their palms and just feeling this divine message. What is their message for you? The first thing that you hear. What is your healing? What is your healing, your tikkun in this lifetime? And watch as they turn this space into a healing bubble of light. As this light dances in and through and around you, you see the possibilities of what happens when you choose the light and you choose love. You open to this divine space where everything is expansive, where your body is no longer your body, it's expansive. It's love in its purest form. And finally, there is the one that you may have just recently lost, if you lost somebody, or someone that you haven't seen before in this meditation. And just receive the messages and offer a message to them. Feel the give and the take, the divine flow, and maybe just feel the love. And as you breathe in all of that goodness and all of that love and all of that light, know that this is who you are. And this is why you came to be here on this earth now, right here and right now. You are a beautiful divine being of love. And all you have to do is open your palms and your heart and share it. And so take that waterfall with you. Take the blessings of your loved ones and your ancestors with you and just place them in your beautiful heart. And you can take this waterfall also with you and return to it whenever you need. And so sit on that bench for a moment that you passed by as you walked along this path and just fill yourself up with joy and magic, for you are magic. And then when you're ready, coming back into your body, into your space, and into your light that is like a flame that never, ever dies. And you can open your eyes. So we just want to thank you for having us here today. And we hope that our prayer for you is that you received some sort of blessing from the talk that we gave, from the meditation we offered, that you're feeling this love, and that you take this love and you share this love with all the people that you come in contact with, that you spread the love. So namaste, everyone.
Welcome any questions or thoughts, but also it could end on that peaceful note, whatever works for you. And thank you again to the End of Life Collaborative. I know some people on this call are new to the End of Life Collaborative, so check it out. And we're what's our technical role? Sponsors? We're
affiliate members.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
Thank you.
It was
Yeah,
amazing.
it was awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Cindy, you can pop our thank you, our website in there. But yeah, I just want to thank you guys both. It was so beautiful and, was just very moving for me. So I appreciate that. And I hope everybody else got as much out of it as I did. If there are any questions, now would be the time to ask them. You can put it in the chat or just raise your hand. And reminder for what was the Zoom call tonight, Ariella?
Tonight is a healing circle at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and it's really a continuation of this. This is the beginning of the conversation of guided healing, meditations, of channeling, of connecting to your own spirit, and remembering who you are and bringing that out. And so we're going to talk about the theme of November and the energy of November and where we're going in our chaotic, crazy world here, and how to navigate through all of that, because it can be really overwhelming. So I hope you join me tonight at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and that Zoom link is right up there.
Great, terrific. Question?
Yes, I have a question. So you guys are recording this this session, right? Where can I rewatch it?
Cindy, is it going to be on our YouTube channel? Yeah. So we have a YouTube channel for the Colorado End of Life Collaborative, and it usually takes a few days, but that's where it will live after this. So you can look for it there.
Okay. And then I have another question for you guys. So when you were talking about your father's suicide, and you were talking about trapped or stuck, my question as an end-of-life doula in training still, so when somebody chooses to end their life, either through VSED, voluntarily stop eating and drinking, or medically assisted, would that maybe that soul also be trapped, or would the family, because the family is more accepting to it, would they be more free to go? What would you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, I'm only speculating, having not been there recently in this that I can remember. But we all go through lifetimes, and there's no such thing as the same action, because to one person who, well, again, I'm a student of Dr. Viktor Frankl, and he talks a lot about people who chose to run into the wire instead of going to the gas chamber. Now, technically that was a suicide, but it was also their last stand to leave this world on their terms. And I would have to say that there was probably a courage involved with that act that was liberating, not confining. But I say that delicately because, my father, that was not necessarily his choice, and he left in a lot of fear. And I know that because I unpacked a lot of that fear and the finances that were, untended to and all that kind of stuff. So they're just the same act, but they're with such different intention. And my experience has been, because I have been at end of life when somebody has consciously chosen to leave this world on their terms, a body racked with cancer, that there is a love and light to that energy and that choice that doesn't necessarily exist in a traumatic, tragic ending.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, but I think your point, though, is a really important one, which is, we all have a fingerprint. We all have a soul print. It's uniquely ours. Our life is ours. Our death is ours. Our relationship is unique. And so, for anybody to ever come and say that person's trapped, they're in hell, they're in whatever, like, that's just not, it doesn't see the person, the individuality of that person. And everybody's spirit needs to be seen for itself.
Interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. So yeah, I just want to thank you once again. I'm going to put in your website there if people want to check that out or come to the Zoom call tonight. But thank you again. This was beautiful. I really appreciated the talk and the meditation. And if anybody has any other questions, you can find their website, mysoulcenter.org, and ask them directly. But other than that, I think we're all finished. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank
I
you
think
very
this is
much.
a
Really fun.
beautiful way to
This is
celebrate
awesome.
the holiday.
It's lovely.
Thanks
Thanks.
so much for having us.
It was really nice meeting you all.
Thank you, you too. You
Thank
too.